Welcome to the League of Extraordinary Storytellers, the podcast that takes you inside the dynamic world of themed experience design. I'm your host, Theron Skees. In each episode, I sit down with industry experts to explore how their teamwork and collaboration transform ideas into unforgettable destinations. I hope it inspires you to see the world through a brand new lens, one story at a time. Join us as we celebrate the visionaries who make the impossible possible. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the League of Extraordinary Storytellers. I'm so excited that you're back. I have an amazing guest today who's not just a colleague, but also a friend and a contributor to my book, Francisco Nunez, the president of Franken Design, right here in Orlando. So we get to hang out and have lunch every once in a while, which is what a blessing for me. Well, what I'm really excited about, as you know, on the League, we always bring on guests where we're talking about how all of these different roles and disciplines, very, very different disciplines, some focused on technical aspects, some focused on non-technical. How do they work together? How do we create these incredible experiences together? So we're going to focus on that. I'd really like to introduce you to Frank Nunez. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Theron. I don't know if I'm worthy of that intro. I mean, I'm the lucky one that gets to mentor up to you, and thank you for your graciousness of always being so welcoming to share, lend a hand, and explain things of why this story came about. It's every conversation is so rich. So I hope that your audience enjoys it as much as I do when I learn from you when we meet together.
Awesome. Well, thank you. One of the problems that I've had, this is only episode 3, is I don't want the podcast to be too long. I want to capture people's attention span. But what inadvertently happens is you end up on all these great rabbit trails and discussions, and I'm like editing an hour and a half trying to get it, into something really condensed. So I have no doubt it'll happen that way here. Well, I know there's a lot of people in our industry that know you and have worked with you. And I think that's a mark of really a great person in the industry is that, your character and your integrity and quality of work that you and your team does follow you. And I think that's amazing. But, we don't always get the opportunity to kind of tell our origin story. So I know you, and we've had a lot of those discussions. But for the sake of the audience, our listeners and viewers, could you just take them through a little bit of your origin story, how you got started, and how did your journey evolve from architecture into themed experience design? I think our audience would be really interested.
Yeah. And I love it, not only to share it, but to talk to everyone, because there's no direct path to theme entertainment. I think that's how it was founded from the original Imagineers, that how they landed in those roles. So I came from the Dominican Republic in 2003, and my very first job in Orlando was with a very small but brilliant little firm called AIP Design. And one of my very first projects was to do a renovation to the Arrivas Brothers glass blowing store in Main Street America in Magic Kingdom. And I will never forget when I went there, as secluded as we make being on site, usually overnight, I got to go on site because we had to go through the guest experience in order to measure something and see the flow of people. I happened to be a young draftsman walking around with a set of drawings and a briefcase and a measuring tape. And I caught myself in a moment of silence and pause as I caught the gaze of several guests looking at me. And the gaze was one of those of like appreciation and approval, like almost as if in true silence, they were saying, "That's pretty cool. Like, you have something to do with this? That's pretty cool." And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not worthy. I'm just here to measure some railing and put some stuff up. But that was a visceral experience that I never forgot. Like, wow, even as tiny as my contribution is, I get to add to this overall magic experience where there's a lot of ingredients that make it that feeling that we get when we go to a theme park, the background music, the architecture, the guests, the employees, the cast members. So I, as a young architect, never forgot that. It was just like, holy cow, like I got to be part of that. And when you're working in architecture in Central Florida, it always comes across that something happens, either a back of house building, a bathroom renovation, you have to have ADA requirements. So I was always volunteering to any project that had to do with the parks, Disney, Universal, I'm in, because I love that experience of being part of that magic and contributing in some form. And it never gets old. No matter how long the parks have been there, whoever goes there for the first time, you see them walk through the gates. You see their eyes of gaze of wonder. I didn't have that as a kid. I wasn't exposed to it. I think I came to Hershey Park as a kid, and that was more of an amusement park than a theme park. I got to experience theme parks as an adult. I was a man when I came and moved from Dominican Republic in my 20s and still had that same kind of
That's
awe
awesome.
and reaction. So I think that my life was just building different experiences in architecture just so that I can craft myself as best as I could to offer value to the theme park world. I think that's how the transition happened.
Awesome. No, I think that's so amazing because most of the people that you talk to who work in this industry as professionals, that behind the scenes, what you often hear is a story that's very similar to what you just said. Even though you're in the industry and we may, some people may be jaded because you're in it, you see all the tricks, you see how everything is done. I find it so amazing when you still have that feeling of awe. You're like, wow, and that draws you in. So I love that. Well, I was going to ask you what inspired you to really kind of take that leap from working for a firm, doing those jobs, and then really launching your own firm. What gap in the industry did you see? What inspired you?
Yeah, entrepreneurship is really just a entrepreneur fever that a taskmaster has, thinking that they could be a business owner. And the first years of owning a business, you're not a business owner; you're just self-employed.
I love that.
To me, so the curiosity landed initially. Just my role at the firms that I had the privilege of working with was always to find efficiencies. I was the director of design technology, which means that if there's a fork in the road, it's Frank's fault. Tell Frank to choose left or right. And we just did that through trial and error, always trying new technologies, and many were failures, but that's how you get success. Fail often. Just try something. That's not good. Try another one, but not staying stifled with analysis paralysis because of fear of trying. So that opportunity that I got to do with MRI architects, with HHCP architects, I had the flexibility of trying things out to look for efficiencies. I was the guy that was always bothered that drawings were just 2D. And I'm like, why is the gaming world advancing? Why is the television world advancing, but architecture is still being told through a 2D medium, and then you have to export it to do a 3D medium, and then you have to colorize it in another medium. So you had all these channels where you were playing telephone game and duplicating the
Right.
information just to present it. Present it for construction, present it for design, present it for buy-off from the clients. Isn't there an environment that produces that? And that's how I found early on one of the early adapters of Revit. It's not perfect. It's very clunky. It's very heavy. You get a chisel and a hammer to model. But when it comes to documentation, it's the InDesign of documentation, because you can bring in models from all these other softwares and then tell one cohesive story with the one model mentality. That was where I was at. I was in the one model, one product, say it right, say it once. And in the desire of really catapulting that, I discovered that there was an opportunity in the theme entertainment industry. There's some theme parks and industries, Disney or so, that have invested heavily in propelling that with their own software, their own products. And there was an opportunity to leverage the lessons learned in healthcare and hospitals and hospitality and hotels, where it was a quick turnaround to develop a product. How can I apply that to theme entertainment, an industry that I love? It's so interesting, and it's not streamlined. It's not designed to be done in a software like Revit that's made for boxes and walls and doors. So it was a challenge that I was aspiring to have, and based on relationships with the theme parks, I saw an opportunity to service themed entertainment. It was very welcoming from our clients. Initially with Universal Creative, they were open to new ideas. How can we make this faster? How can we make this better? And gave me a shot. I will forever be extremely grateful for that opportunity and that trust on this individual to go and deliver a package, and that growing and growing to multiple lands, and a litany of just opportunities with them. So that was a pivotal point. It's that there wasn't a service being provided specifically. There's just architecture, and there's show set that's done in-house. But I saw a gap in the medium of, can I be the translator, use my 15 years at the time of architecture, and just focus on show set.
Yeah.
And I could, and there wasn't a performa developed. There wasn't a proof of concept. There wasn't a firm that's like, that's a risk. We're doing really well with architecture. This is what we want to do. And I understood and respected that. So I wanted to jump out and try it. Thought that my plan B to going back to being the director of design technology at another firm was better than most people's plan A. I was very fortunate. So I said, I'm going to go try this out. And if it fails in 6 weeks, I'm back at a firm.
I love
It's
that
been
passion.
6 years.
No, that's awesome. I love the fact that you brought up that because it's well, you there's so much there, right? That we should unpack a little bit. First, I love the idea of taking risks, right? And that literally is what themed experience design, themed entertainment is you're pushing these boundaries, you're taking these risks. So I think it's amazing that you started your whole firm with that mindset that we're going to try this, we're going to take this risk. Looking back, it's like I don't even remember the times where we literally just did things on blueprints. You're absolutely right, 2D. And everyone had to put that together in their mind. You have an elevation, you've got a floor plan and a site plan. Let's assemble this in our minds. The reason it's hard to remember that is that 3D is so prevalent now everywhere. And you're absolutely right, Frank. That was what a huge pivot point. And there really was a gap in the industry to fill that. So I can't imagine doing a project now without you guys, without a skilled team like you have to represent and pre-visualize the space in 3D before you start building.
Yeah. Yeah. At first it started as a nice to have. And we always joke, like, yes, they've built amazing attractions by hand. You can do that way, but you can also get a root canal without anesthesia. It's like, which way is less painful? And there's just so much benefit to inform, the other disciplines. You can end up with 32 disciplines with audiovisual, architectural, structural, mechanical, plumbing. And instead of having them do a guessing game or try to interpret something from a different file, why not place your desired IP representation or your desired environment in the same file that they're in and allow us all to have a virtual conversation. Building the building virtually allows for all these situations to surface. And it's way less expensive to move it
Mm,
with a mouse than it is to move it in the field.
absolutely.
And that's why the benefit was a package that's a lot prettier. There's depth of field that you can really grasp, and the visualization becomes easier because instead of stopping to draw an elevation to then draw a perspective, you're just pulling views from one model. So then it
Amazing.
allows reviews to be richer, but the untangible benefit is what's not shown in the drawings. It's what the communication and coordination that's happening when the teams come together. Now the architect is in the room, the structural is in the room, the speakers are in the room, and now you can say, oh, you know what? Let's move that speaker to the left. And having done that virtually is way less expensive than doing that in the field.
Makes so much sense. I think I love the way that you describe that. So much of what we do, and even this podcast, to a large degree, is based on the benefit of collaboration and how to do that really well with people who have jobs that are very different than yours. And you just described a tool and a working environment to really assist that. So I think that's amazing. I was going to ask you a question. You were a fantastic contributor to my book, Creating Memorable Worlds. And one of the things that you said, you contributed to quite a few places. And one thing you said was you described the process of aligning, the creative vision with the space itself and the materials, and how this kind of early validation helps set the stage for all the design steps that follow. And this seems like such an important transition. I wonder if you could just talk about that process a little bit further.
Yeah, and that's the thank you for the opportunity to clarify too that in the world of many creatives, although we work with all creative agencies, Franken Design is not a creative team. Our creativity is relentless on the efficiency of the software. We allow it allows everyone else to be creative and not hinder their creative process with, like, let's stop doing an amazing cue or an amazing ride scene to figure out how to plug in these things into this clunky software. That's our creativity. That's our IP, is how to make that beautiful. But we're not involved at all in anything that, like, the storytelling part. That's why we engage with you and many others that are just brilliant at creating that narrative.
Right. Right.
And we love building the show set virtually, building it in a way that allows you to appreciate or even make decisions. You know what? I was thinking about a village. I now want a castle. And those iterations can happen a lot quicker when there's a valid reaction to the space. And you can either in VR, either by standing there or on a screen or in a dome, get to see it. There's or even 3D printed models and environments that you can print to show a client
Yeah.
the scale and feel of things. Design is a process of discovery. And the sooner you discover, the sooner you're vetting out your design.
That's amazing. I'm in the book. I talk about that. If you start looking at these larger categories of disciplines, I just frame it up as creative design and delivery. There are others, of course, and you just really reinforced a principle that I was trying to communicate in the book, that design really forms a bridge, if you will, between creative and delivery. So the delivery team, project managers, their whole focus is to get this creative vision built, and they can't really do that until you and your design team translate that creative vision into a methodology, a means, documentation that enables it to actually be built. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, and it holds a lot of weight with us. It's a big responsibility. Um, uh, God is in the details, and if a lot of little things are missed, it ends up affecting the project heavily. And that's why there's some environments that people look at and say, I get it. They were trying to do medieval, but something is wrong. Why isn't it? And it's really the details. It's how was the scratch, how was the wear on the rock work, how was the aging applied, and that's all left up to artists in the field. That's all for people that apply what our drawings say and make that happen. But even in that transition, as we're translators of their intellectual property, we really, really hold a big responsibility with holding up that intent, upholding that intent, and honoring what they envisioned. As we're taking their beautiful creative drawings and transforming them into a technical construction document that becomes a legal binding agreement. You're going to build me this for this amount of money. We have a big responsibility to get that as close as possible with all the limitations that softwares may have, that we can never catch up to the sketches or the hand drawings that an artist can have. So we don't take that responsibility lightly.
That definitely shows up in your work, where you take it so seriously, and asking the right questions, I think, is really important. I love what you wrote for the book, because you really describe that upfront process of really asking the questions, really deeply understanding and collaborating, so that you can translate that creative vision into the physical place. You talk quite a lot on not only the podcast here, but also for what you've written, and it's my benefit that I know you, and we've hung out together quite a bit. But you like, I know that you like the idea of finding innovative solutions to complex challenges. That's fun. I enjoy that as well. But what's interesting about that is, in a nutshell, that kind of describes our what it's like working in our industry. Is there are challenges, there are clients that have a business, and our job is to find the best solution for that. So I wonder if you could just kind of talk about that a little bit, about innovative solutions, how you source them, how you find them, those complex challenges. How do you kind of face that head on?
Yeah, staying current is it's a project in itself, and you have to be very intentional. Thanks to success, we're very busy, but what the busyness does is it has you focus on today, on that project. And while you're working head down on that project, technology around you is advancing. New software is coming out, new things are happening. I mean, we have the AI revolution happening in front of us. And unless you take a step to be intentional, to find and explore, empower your team. That's one thing that a lot of the questions I've been answering from the contributions to the book, but even things in there was all about if I've had any success or any virtue, it's been judge of character or alignment to great people. The number one thing that qualifier to work at Franken Design is demeanor. If you're a
Mm,
positive, outgoing
love that.
individual, everything else can be trained. If you have all the skills in the world, but you haven't managed your people skills and your humanity, it's not something that we will be able to curb. So those individuals, because of they're so optimistic, because they're so forward thinking, we always have internal challenges of, hey, what did you discover today? We have these updates, we have these internal challenges of like, what AI are you using? AI, there's a lot of misconceptions, and there's almost like a religious connotation towards like, oh, I can't do that, that's sacrilegious, I can't go in and ask it to proofread something for me. And I believe that most individuals are only seeing it from like the 10% of availability of what it can really empower. I do a lot of business coaching where I receive coaching. I log in or purchase any system or software that I can. We as a company have on retainer the Corbin Group. It's a great business coaching group, and many others that are reading books and absorbing. And I heard yesterday somebody said, if you're not using AI, you're being irresponsible, you're being unproductive and irresponsible with your team. I was like, whoa, that's
Wow.
visceral. That's very, very. I'm like, yeah, you're
Wow.
being irresponsible by not challenging yourself, by not discovering something. And the other day, there was a huge table of data that I needed to separate one column into two and then merge another column into one. I remember this equation, and I remember that there's a formula to do that. So I go to a GPT and say, how do I do this? And upload the table. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I shortening it? Why am I asking it, train me to do this? No, no, no. Take columns A and B and merge them into C, and take columns F and G and
Yeah.
literally, and it was boom, here's your data
In
back
seconds.
in seconds. So
Mm,
it wasn't cheating. I didn't not provide my intellectual property. I provided value by saying, hey, Mr. Client, you know that information that was probably going to take a day to get to 1,000 lines. Here it is. I use this. And they were like, wow. So I believe that the only difference is not to be afraid of technology, not to be afraid of advances, but just run towards it head on. It is coming. It's an arranged marriage, so fall in love as soon as possible so that you can enjoy life.
it's a
Um,
great description.
it's literally, we're in a world of access, and we're all the people that cut the trees, and somebody showed up with a chainsaw, and we're like, look at that cheater, look at him with a chainsaw. No, no, no. Learn how to use it, where you pump
Yeah.
the gas, learn how to chain the chain and sharpen it. That's your next tool. It's no
Yeah.
different than when we were drawing by hand and CAD came out, we were drawing in 2D, and Revit came out. Now we have AI.
Yes. It's a really great description. I've said before too that I think AI may take some people's jobs, but the bigger issue is going to be the people that know how to use AI will probably take the people's job who don't know how to use AI, because the idea is it'll make you really, really efficient. And
Yep.
the scenario that you described is, I find, also very, very helpful. Note taking in meetings, those kinds of things. I find all of those supporting um, technology is very, very helpful in our industry. And people who are outside of our industry, or maybe even the individuals who we would consider the next generation who are entering our industry, who maybe haven't gone through a project yet, don't understand the level of complexity on a project. And it is extremely high. So having those tools to work for you and help you, I agree, is extremely important. Um, one of the other inputs that you gave for the book was, you talked quite a lot about show set design, which I'd love to give you a second to just talk about, how you define that and everything. But what I like about what you said is, I think this is true of design in general, but specifically for show set design, it sits at the intersection of multiple disciplines, which are creative design, engineering, fabrication, materiality. I mean, there's so many different elements. What does the collaboration process look like between all of those different teams? I'd love for you to go into that a little.
Yeah. And shows that could be a bit of a riddle for those new to it. Comes from the film, from the production, from the theater aspect of it, to having to really break it down to layman terms with some of our clients is like, if you take the building and you shake it out, everything that falls out is the show set. What remains is the architecture. Or no, no, we say the show set sometimes is applied to the building. Everything that falls out is the props. So show set is what will allow, what do you have to put in the background or on the scene or apply to the space that will convey the story, that now you took me to a place, a period, circa certain, generation, or inside of a movie scene. What are the elements that have to be here in order to convey that idea and buy off that I'm here? Joe Rohde is an expert at this, and you go to Exploration Everest and you walk through the queue and you see the props, you see the notepads, you see the drawings, you see the wall material. It's built in Florida. However, it is an as-built, one-to-one representation of what you see in the actual property that you're representing. And all the nuances that have to do with aging and application and materials, that's all the show set. Sometimes that line is blurred. If the show set is very modern and you have an attraction that's very utilitarian and now it's all metal, ergo Velociraptor and Universal Studios is all utilitarian, the architect
Right.
can actually just go ahead and the same structure that's holding up the building happens to look very similar to the intellectual property from the movies in Jurassic Park. So the show set ends up being just a mixture with a couple of scratches in some places and paint and color to look aged. But the show set is the discipline within the architectural component that makes an attraction. It's the flavor. If the architect is building the body for the actor, the costuming is the show set, and the
Great
makeup
description.
is the show set
Oh,
of it.
that's
So,
great. And what do you? Yeah, that's great. My follow-up question was, how does architecture fit within that? But you've described it perfectly well. It
and
is.
and And I'll add to that one little bit is that then you have the constraints. So you have an idea. Now you want it to look like a burrow. Like let's say that we're all tiny hamsters and we're in a world of hamsters. How do you then comply with that burrow while also maintaining egress? And now there's something that's going to kill your show because you have an exit light. And the place is going to be hot, so you need air conditioning. And you need security, so you need CCTV cameras. And there's a little sound, so you feel like you're in the burrow, so there's speakers. If you put all those elements, the burrow goes from being a burrow now looks like a robot because you have all these wires and cables and air conditioning and electrical. How do you hide that? How do you allow for all these utilities to be present without stealing the guests from the experience? And this is where many of our clients are just geniuses. We allow for their environment to be looked at so that they can consider these things. But real credit goes to you, Theron, how you have advised us in many projects, and a lot of our creative teams that we work with, either Imagineer, Universal Creative, and many large national firms. That once they see the problem, they are immediately coming up with solutions to how to cover something, and we provide them as well. They give us a liberty of saying, what do you got? How do you think that the guest will not see that vent? Well, you have an arch here, you have all these Gothic arches, and there's usually some space between the arches. Can the wall be a plenum? And now the air conditioner is coming through that, and nobody will know that that's not aging in the building.
Nice.
Boom, bought off, and there it is, and it's still to this day on the attraction.
Nice,
So
nice.
that's
Well,
how we come together.
yeah, yeah, it's so great what you just described because there's um there's so much that goes on in that discussion, right? You illustrated it perfectly, and the original creative team had a vision, as you said, for a hamster burrow, right, where they live, and but they have to be willing to give up things. They have to be willing to compromise in certain ways to get other aspects of the design that has to work. You have to have air conditioning. You need to have exit signs, all of the points that you brought up. And you literally just described and illustrated what that ecosystem looks like, how that collaboration takes place, and pitching new ideas and adapting. And I love that. I think that was fantastic. Perhaps you could describe maybe one of the most complex or unconventional sort of design challenges that you've encountered. Obviously, you don't have to mention names, but I'd love to understand like maybe a really complex challenge, and then how did you and your team solve it?
Huh. This is a really great question. We have challenges where there are environments that are supposed to look like you're in water, but you are in water and you're inside of a building. So now that building is a big pool and there is walls and a lot of electronics, projectors, ride vehicles inside of it. The beauty of the technology that we leverage is that we are placing everyone in the space. And now with Unreal Engine and a lot of tools that allow for simulation. You can even simulate liquids and water and fluids and smoke and gas. So it's one of those things that would have been through trial and error, probably building a mock-up, probably having to try the boat and build this linear pool that goes around the building. But through technology, we were able to show splash zones. We were able to show when the boat falls from this ramp onto that, this is the extent that this computer, don't believe us, this computer says that water splashes at this ratio.
Very cool.
And that allows us, there's the complexity of building artifacts, either a major boat or a small city at scale in Boston. And how do you fit that through an elevator that was built in the 50s and travel up to the top story of the Prudential Tower with 158 100-pound chips of plastic that have 16 to 20 buildings on each? How do you break up this model that's 50 feet by 40 feet? Well, you can't cut a building in half, so you have to follow the roadmaps. And if you've seen, Boston is one of the first, cities we have in America. So it looks like Europe. All the streets are like this. So our models were all cut, not like Manhattan and rectangles. They're all following the center of the street because that was the best place to cut the model without affecting buildings.
Like a giant
So
puzzle.
it's a giant puzzle, 158 pieces that
Oh, man.
they're all about this size minimum with 24 to 16 to 24 inch buildings on them. Very heavy. So all of that process, we could have discovered it in the field, but because we had as built the elevator, as built the space, the doors, we could take those pieces in 3D, put them on the racks in 3D and say, look, this fits, because virtually we did a dry run of the movie theater does a storyboard, or does a previs video, which is a very low quality animation. The videos that got leaked for Deadpool that allowed the movie to get funded to be made was the
Right.
previs. So with the technology that we're using, we get to previs attractions, rides, environments, and design.
I really appreciate the fact that you described a couple different situations and scenarios, and I think that's fantastic. Pre-visualization is so very, very important, and sometimes at least this has been my experience, sometimes you'll have a client that really doesn't see the value and doesn't want to pay for it. They see it as an extra nice to have. And when you describe the scenario that you went through and the challenges that you were able to overcome because you pre-visualized, hopefully that helps listeners to kind of see some of the advantages of that. I know the larger legacy brands, Disney, Universal, Merlin, even, and others, pre-visualize ride experiences
Mm-hmm.
as well, and that helps to figure out,
Often.
yeah, timing on all kinds of things. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That's awesome. Well, I was going to ask you, we've talked about all of the different, not all of them, but we talked about a large variety of the different expertise, the different disciplines and roles on a project, and how they work together, specifically from your perspective, because you're representing a design function which is literally in between creative and the delivery team, specialty disciplines like live entertainment or ride design, and in a sense, design sort of sits in the middle, and everybody kind of comes into that field. I'm curious, how do you handle situations where you have a creative concept or creative ideation, but it conflicts with the technical feasibility to be able to deliver it? How do you? I know you've never had that problem before.
Oh man, you must have been listening into the meeting before this podcast.
Well, I know that our listeners, and especially those that are new to this field, would really appreciate some of your wisdom on how do you bring that together.
Elasticity and tact. Uh, Constantly reminding ourselves, all of us, that we're in one team. Sometimes we represent one discipline, but we're all here together for one common goal, for the success of the project. Not even you looking good or I looking good, the whole project looking good, because that's going to be our calling card. That experience, that success is what is going to yield the next opportunity. We have that many times. We have there's experiences where people have, there's so many phrases about like the champagne desires with the beer budget, and I'm murdering
It's
it
a
because
good
I'm
one.
translating from Spanish to English. There's probably a better one in English there on, but
No,
you
no, that's a
understand.
good one.
Everyone has their own phrases about the reality of what expectations are, what reality is, and unfortunately, because of our role of bringing those ideas into a virtual environment, we tend to be the bubble burster. We tend to be the ones that have to say, yeah, we have no sky hooks. We can't hang this off of a cloud. There has to be a structure to support this, and it is not appealing if you hang it from there. So, our goal is to never present problems unless there's a solution attached to it. We're going to warn you, this is it. Here's what we think. What are your thoughts? And figure it out. But yeah, every single attraction starts with those impossibles. And I applaud those people. It's not naiveness. It's not that they're not educated. It's not that they're negating it. They're pushing the boundaries. They're saying, right now, this isn't possible. Right now, I don't know how to have a boat floating off of a cloud. Instead of sails, I want this boat to have clouds, and I want the guests and the children to feel like the cloud is holding the boat up. And it's for us, the creative team with them, engineers, designers, mechanical engineers, to figure out how to get that as close as possible. But it does happen very, very often. Even a space that somebody sketched, beautiful, the actual room and the environment the developer purchased is not at the scale of what it would allow for that scene to be developed. So now we got to get really creative with forced perspectives and different materials. What I advise everyone in that environment is to don't curb your enthusiasm, but be mindful of your passion. Always maintain like there has to be something better at the turn. People could get disgruntled. It's like, no, if you can't give it to me, then forget it. Let's just stop it. Forget it. It's like that's the enemy of progress. Let's try it. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Let's try it. Fail often. Fail often.
I love that. And I've also been guilty of saying, encouraging, because my leadership is mostly in the creative space, is encouraging creatives not to fall in love with their own ideas, and to remind them that, look, in this industry, you're always working for a client. You'll always. It's not necessarily your ideas. It's kind of the client's ideas. You're there to facilitate those solutions and innovations. And I thought the way that you represented that was totally spot on. You have to dream big to find these innovations, but you have to have enough pragmatism that when it comes back, that look, engineering wise, we can't build a 120-foot glass cantilever out over open space. It's, you're going to see some steel there or something. Having the whole team be of the mindset that let's work together and push the envelope, but at the end of the day, it's got to be buildable.
Mm-hmm.
And having now worked for the last few years in and around Saudi Arabia, and I know you're familiar with this as well. That's my first thought of, it's very exciting because there are impossible ideas that they want to bring to life and make reality, but they're impossible ideas. So you often have this conflict of trying to remind them that, that's going to be, that's not,
Yep.
it's you can't do that, but you could do this.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
And,
talking
and
about other countries,
yep.
one of the areas that you contributed in the book, which I'm so grateful to help readers to understand, that is literally working across different countries. You've worked quite a lot internationally. I've done quite a lot of that as well, and I was surprised by some of the things that I saw. And I asked you for the book to have provide a perspective about building codes and regulations and what that's like when you go from your home country to a host country for a project. And could you just share a little bit about that, how you navigate those challenges, but you still stay true to the creative vision?
This morning, I found myself adding yet another time zone to my phone because I have clients that I have to speak to, and eliminating anything that's time change or they're in the same time zone. Let's remove them. But I literally found myself adding yet another time zone just to not have to do the math, but just look at my phone and say, okay, it's time there. And it's up to like, I think it's up to 12. So now I'm just like at every hour
Oh my
around the
goodness.
world.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just laziness. It's just me not wanting to do the math. Like, just let me confirm it with my phone. It's 4 o'clock there. Perfect. um, I believe the travel. I love with students that we have a mentorship program and an internship program. And I love it when they're planning on their educational journey to do studies abroad. There's so much. It's a master's program to go abroad just to experience other cultures and working in other cultures. The number one thing that it teaches you is to not be comfortable. And no matter what you know, relax that and be willing to learn more, because there's other building codes. We have the AIA here, we have REBA in the UK, and then in the UK it's applied in Asia and the Middle East, and then you have China, and all these different building codes that you have to abide by. And our goal is to maintain the elasticity, to just be very inquisitive, be fresh-minded about what do I need to learn to succeed in this zone, in this area of jurisdiction that I'm in now. It's very challenging at times, but it's extremely rewarding when you figure that out. When it comes to the previous topic, which segues right into this one, is those challenges of those unreal expectations. There are things that do land in a realm where the client is satisfied with the appeal and the look of it, and it wasn't possible at the beginning of the project. And yes, we had to get really creative and navigate it, but that to me is the biggest win, when they're satisfied with, like, that's as close as I can get in reality with it. But now we've created something, or we've explored a system, or a patent was granted to something that didn't exist when this project started. And that's the biggest reward at anything that I've been involved with. On the working abroad, there's a lot of economical challenges, timing challenges. Everyone has different standards of, like, payment happens in 30 days, and 60 days, 120 days. So all of those things is there's a whole machinery of financial setup that a company has to be ready whenever embarking to participate in projects overseas, because the different standards of translation, the financial loss when you're receiving your income in the States from that country, and the conversion. So there's a lot of minutia. The project becomes a project in itself. It's not even about the project. So the amount of hours that you're spending on this attraction are coupled with the same amount of hours administrating that client and that
Right.
contract.
Right. That's probably, I would imagine, if for individuals who haven't worked overseas, that's kind of a revelation, right? That, that what you just said about the administrative part, and payment and codes, and I think it's important for the next generation that's coming into this industry to understand that it is worldwide. It's very broad, and there are so many benefits to you personally, and to your family. If you have a family you're traveling with, there's a lot of benefits to living abroad, working abroad as well. Well, a great conversation, Frank. We've talked quite a lot about the industry, how we work together, specifically to design, show set design, tools, technologies. What I would love to do is just do a little transition and talk to those new professionals that are coming into the industry, maybe students, that next generation. And I'd love to just tap your experience, and you could give them a few things here. One of the things I was thinking about is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned since you've been not just since Frank and design, obviously, but since you've been in the industry, specifically between creativity, technical execution. What are some lessons that you've learned that would be helpful?
Yeah, I've learned that I am a product of my mentors. Who are you aligning yourself to? And don't be shy to ask for mentorship. Reach out to someone that is probably excited to share their experiences with you, and learn from them. No matter what situation you're going through in life, from like personal to business, if you look at how old we are as a species, somebody has gone through the same exact problem. Maybe in the 1900s, maybe in the 1500s, maybe it was a wheel, Carol, and that lesson doesn't apply to you, but something of that lesson will apply to you. So pick up a book, research it, something that you're going through. That lesson has happened before, and someone can avoid you the pain, stand on shoulders of giants and write their coattails if you have to, and learn from somebody. Pick up the phone, LinkedIn. I admire all the young, entrepreneurial spirited individuals that are coming out of SCAD, out of the City Lab program, out of universities all over our nation, uh, that are reaching out and saying, I want to learn. These podcasts, these events, this is such a rich environment, because when do you get, with our schedules, did you get Theron and Frank on a call together, and now you
That's
get
true.
to hear this conversation? I subscribe to as many of these as possible, and every single one of my commute is filled with knowledge. So aligning yourself with mentors is the number one thing, because your mentors become your advocates, and everything in life requires advocacy for you to grow. Find a mentor like Theron that invites you to a project that the client says, no, 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 Francisco, for you to experience this hotel, you have to come with your family. And I got invited to Cancun, Mexico with my entire family to experience this retailtainment design that Theron was doing.
A
And I'm
great
just
project.
here to draw. And that was a wonderful experience, because I aligned myself to a great mentor. So
That was great. That was great. That was a good project. I loved it.
that was great.
No, thanks for that. There's probably another whole show we could do just on advice for the next generation. What I
Count me in.
one of the things I think that you do really, really well is this balance between the technical aspects of design and all of the requirements of that, and balancing that with the storytelling and the nuances of those are intangible things, right? I mean, they're emotions, they're feelings. How do we create this emotional bond with the visitors and guests who come here? And I think you really do a great job balancing that. I wonder if you have any thoughts or advice for anyone who will be entering the industry in a technical capacity, in that design capacity, for example, and how do they manages the complexities, but don't lose sight of the storytelling. Since you do that so well, I wonder if you have a thought for them.
Yeah. Technology is forever changing, and chasing it sometimes might feel like chasing waterfalls, because as soon as you become good with one thing, there's another brand new one that came out. But there's some that are more constant than the norm. There's some that are like, what is the industry using? To not sound like a voice piece for them, on the architecture, engineering, and design side, Revit seems to be the leading product for the next 5 years. I know Autodesk is changing it with AI, and they're going to come out with something completely different. But in the meantime, the expiration date is still far out. There's still enough to learn in that environment. 3D tools, anything that would allow you to convey someone's ideas or your ideas visually. And no matter how great your idea is, you're always going to be challenged with somebody who can express theirs better. It's all about, how can you express your idea? How can you articulate it? How can you represent it? So whatever that medium is, by hand, virtual, animations, videos, 3D, storytelling, craft your niche of what you are good at, and make yourself as good as possible to convey an idea, convey a product, convey a message. We're in the business of communication. It may seem like it's drawings, it may seem like it's models, but we're communicating. We're communicating the design intent, and we every day try to be better at communicating.
Right, right. Fantastic description. I think that nailed it completely. And I see we're getting very close to our time here. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about how people could reach out and connect with you, some best opportunities for that. And then if there's anything that you haven't shared that you want to, I'd love for you to do that, especially about Franken Design.
Franken Design is continues to grow and grow at a exciting pace. We are very fortunate with all of our partners in the industry that continue to trust us with amazing uh, scale projects in the United States, in Saudi, in Asia. So just extremely grateful of this industry, how welcoming it's been, how well received we have been. Um, so in that, paying it forward, anyone that reaches out, we'll make time. Might be 15 minutes. I might be driving to the airport, but I'll get a call. I'll have a conversation. I'll help you troubleshoot an idea. We don't have to be on a scope of work in order to collaborate. Even on the technology that we pride ourselves in, it doesn't matter. We're not on the project. We have teams that come to us and say, how would you assemble this? And I would say, our success has been by putting A, B, and C together. Great. So we love those conversations. We are students of life. We're constantly learning. All of our team, not only me, Patrick Warehouse, Jeremy, Jose Esquiling, Carrie Ann, Myrna, all of our leadership team and our production team, Ray Camacho, amazing artist, Iona host, a litany of people that are here. They would love to assist and support you either from a student side, from a client side, from the professional side. Let's just have a conversation. And if you want to reach us, you can find us on all the major platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, X, Instagram, or our website has a contact page, or info@frankendesign.com.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Frank. This has been a pleasure, and I'm really sad because the hour went faster than I wanted it to. I wish that I could slow down time and we could kind of talk in a bubble for way longer. But thank you for really showing the balance there. Between design, which I always describe as you're limited in a sense by natural laws. You're limited by materiality, by the codes of the country that you're building in, and there are so many. Mm, you're working within a specific ecosystem, and then oftentimes you have creativity that people want to think is completely boundless, and we do because we want to innovate. And you've really done a great job stitching that together so that the building or the design process doesn't feel limiting, that you can take all of that potential for impossible things and then actually realize them perhaps in ways that you didn't think when you started out. So I really appreciate you capturing that. Did we miss anything? Just any last minute thoughts that you might want to share?
Thank you. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for this platform. Thank you for giving back to our industry. You have so much successes throughout your life, an amazing resume, amazing experiences, and most people would just kick back and enjoy, a villa somewhere. And you are invested into the industry because you're a fan of it. It comes across when the cameras aren't on, and we're just having a conversation. Walking through Disney Springs with you changed my entire experience of what it all means, that all the buildings were it's this village and now the power plant converted into a restaurant. And like there are signs on walls that I would have never noticed, even with me being in the industry. I appreciate it so much more because you gave me the context of the story, and you love what you do. I believe everyone should do what they love, and I don't mean that esoterically, I mean that selfishly. Because if you're doing what you love, we are all better served by you. If you love making sandwiches, that's going to be the best sandwich I've ever had. So go do what you love. Follow your passion. It's real. Cliches exist because they're real. Follow
Awesome.
what you love. Like Theron, thank you for the space. I mean, you have a Rolodex, a network, an atmosphere of people that are all veterans, 20 years, 15 years in the industry, 30 years, people that you worked elbows to elbows with in designing awesome attractions here and overseas. We're the newcomers. We're the newcomers to the industry. We just getting started. And you were one of the first people that once we posted our case study, your comment alone engaged everyone into a conversation about how you leveraged BIM and technology in your time at Disney, et cetera, that it started a whole conversation in that thread. And I will forever be grateful. You probably don't even remember commenting on that so many years ago, 5 years ago or so. And I'm here to say publicly, thank you, Theron, for no matter that we were the new guys and the new kids, nobody knew us. You were like, hey, man, that's pretty cool. Good job.
Well, thank you, Frank. It's been an amazing collaboration. I really enjoy working with you guys, and thanks for participating, not just on the podcast, but as a comrade, right? Somebody we can link arms and solve problems together. And I really appreciate you, what you bring to the industry, and thanks for your kind words. My passion and desire for this podcast is to really open others' eyes about our industry, not just for those that are entering the industry, but I really now that I'm sort of out of it in a sense, I love taking what I've learned to other economies, other parts of the economy all over the world, and I want to teach others how to do that too. So thanks for being a part of it. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and experience. And it's another one in the bag for the league, and I hope people get a lot out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Theron.